So we're here with the 2004 Hyundai Tiburon. Pulling the engine out of this, it is a 4-cylinder. The V6 might be a little bit different, I don't know. But I'm going to begin by putting the back end up on ramps and the front end up on jack stands. And after that, so let's get to that. So I went ahead and took off the hood. So to take off the hood, it is currently sitting right there. It is very easy. I was able to do it by myself, and it's also very, very light. So first step, I set something to prop up the hood. I had a wooden stick I used to prop it up because you're going to be taking off your hood struts. So if you don't know how these work, there is a sprung clamp type band on the back, right? So if you look closely, all you do is you stick a flathead screwdriver, a mini pry bar, something in behind this, and you pop it out. Once you do that, you can grab it and just pull it off of the hood itself. Do this for both sides, and your hood is going to be resting on your hinges and your hood prop, whatever you use to prop up your hood. So I went ahead and unbolted this side. It was a 12mm bolt on both sides. There's 4 bolts total, so keep track of those for later. And then after that, I removed the hood prop and slowly lowered it down to make sure it would not slide off of the hinges, which it didn't. It lowered down perfectly. And then I just picked it up from the front and sat it over there. Do not forget to disconnect your washer fluid from your hood before you remove it. So the way I have this lifted right now, I currently have the rear wheels up on ramps. You don't need to do anything to the rear to take the engine out. It's just nice to have it up in the air. It makes it easier to get under the car and everything, so I went ahead and put it up on ramps. If you want to put it up on jack stands, you can. It does not matter at all. Then for the front, I have it up on some Harbor Freight jack stands going to the pinch welds right underneath. And I went ahead and took off the wheels on both sides to make it easier to get to some of the things. For instance, your accessory belts that you will have to take off. So I went ahead and took off the exhaust shroud. Not too sure if you actually have to do that or not, but I did it anyways. So took off the power steering pump. It is 2 bolts. They're the top one and the bottom one, which I already took off the power steering mount. The top bolt goes into this little channel, I guess you could say. So listen, top and bottom, you'll be able to take all the tension off of this belt. And the alternator has a tensioner on it, which I believe I have already showed you. I already took it out, it's right there. So loosen up that tensioner, it'll move the alternator a little bit, disconnect the alternators from its connectors and everything, and pop it off. Make sure you label these so you don't forget what they are. Then there's 2 belts done. Then you have a 3rd belt, which goes to your AC compressor, which is right up about there. So for this one, you have this right here, which is another idler pulley. On the back, it has a bolt there. Turn that a good bit, and it's probably going to be difficult, but it should free up tension on that belt. So there's belt 3, and you're good to take off power steering pump, take off alternator, and eventually your AC compressor. Side note, make sure you label absolutely everything you take off. Otherwise, you are going to forget it when you go to put everything back together. So make sure you label. These ones I didn't label because they're blue. These are the hood bolts. That's kind of obvious. But label everything so you don't forget when you go to put it back together. Now for your AC compressor, which is right down there. Okay, so we are now underneath the car. There are 4 bolts. You got 2 right there. You got that one up there, which is already loose, and you can kind of see the one right over there. You gotta take off all 4 of those, and your AC compressor should come off because everything else is off. So I did get it off. It is currently right there. It's that thing. I have it zip tied up partially out of the way. It can't move too far because it's still connected to the rest of the car. With the AC hoses, I guess you could say, pipes, whatever. So next up, I'm going to be working on the CV axles. These seem to be pretty easy. It looks like I can just disconnect this bolt right here on the struts, and where the wheel speed sensor connects right here. Disconnect both of those. This whole thing should pull forward and then do all that, and I should be able to pivot this forward, smack this out, and I might try to pivot it off down over here and pull it out from this bottom. It looks like both sides are the exact same, so whatever works on this side should work over there too. Now there is a few different ways to take off the CV axle nut. The way that I do it is, first off, get this cotter pin on here off, right? So get that out. So there's your cotter pin. I use just a regular flathead, since this is has those like vents in it. You can just slide it in there and put it up against your caliper, and then take your 32 mil. Now mine's on an impact. You could use a breaker bar, I guess, because all of the force is going to the screwdriver, and then just get this onto the nuts. Maybe. There we go. Get on the nut and then just, there you go. There's your axle nut and your washer. So put those in a bag, label it, don't forget about those. So now we're going to loosen up the where the wheel speed sensor cable is attached at right here. Loosen that up, take this off. Now I went ahead and took off my tie rods just so I could get to these nuts easier. It's pretty easy. It has a 17 mil castle nut with a cotter pin on it that sits right down here. Tie rod goes up on top. You remove that cotter pin, break loose that castle nut, unscrew it most of the way, and then take a hammer. I just use the regular hammer because I don't have like a sledge or something. I don't know where it's at. So just take that hammer, smack the side of it so that it kind of loosens everything up, and hit it like a few times. And then after that, you're going to make sure that the castle nut is mostly off, just enough to where when you smack the bottom of the tie rod, the bottom part, you're not hitting the actual threads. You want to hit the nut. That way you don't mess up your threads. So yeah, just smack the castle nut. It should pop up, pop out, and you should be good. Now I got lucky with my CV axles. Mine are very, very easy to move. I just moved it a second ago. Yeah, mine move pretty easily. You might have to smack yours with a hammer to get that to break loose, or some like rust penetrant or PV blaster or WD-40, I don't know. Whatever you got, just something, just depends. Mine though, I think I already moved this one. Mine was pretty free a second ago, so I should be good. I already got this off and off to the side, so yeah. And back to the strut. Alright, so we got a 15, an 18, and these two down here are both 19s. So I don't know why they use so many different sizes, but yeah. Alright, so the top bolt on the strut is cammed for alignment purposes, so keep that in mind when you're taking that one out. You're gonna have to move it a little bit. Bottom bolt's just a regular bolt. What else? Oh, your wheel speed sensor, this bit of wire right here has like just enough distance to get out the CV axle. I would highly recommend taking that little mount, I guess you can call it, off as well. And either take that off or take out the actual wheel speed sensor. I tried to, but the bolt broke, so yeah. But everything's here is free. Keep in mind, this thing is kind of heavy. I got it propped up by a hammer right now, and yeah. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Be careful when you go to take out the CV axle. Make sure you don't damage anything. You're probably gonna have to tap out the CV axle for like a good distance. Might even have to stick like a socket or an extension in there and hammer on that. If you have an air hammer, that works great too. So yeah, just keep all that in mind. But this side is officially done. I just gotta actually pull out the CV axle from the transmission. I'm gonna hold off on that for a minute. Now I just gotta go over to the other side, get all this taken apart. So now that I have both CV axles disconnected and I have basically everything mechanically disconnected, I just gotta actually take the CV axles out of the car. Which I need a pry bar. I don't have one right now, so instead I'm moving on to what else I can do right now, which is take off the exhaust manifold. These are all 14mm nuts. I'm surprised that mine are not rusted and didn't break on me, but yeah, I guess I got lucky with that. So it's the next day. I believe I left off the exhaust manifold. It's off now. It's 9 bolts, but that's off, so that's good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and drain the transmission fluid, which is the drain plug's down over here under this cover. So let me get this off and I'll show you guys. Alright, so I got the cover off and the drain plug is that large bolt right there. That one should drain all the fluid out of your transmission, so then you can take off your CV axles and not have anything draining out of the seals. So I went ahead and I pulled out the CV axles. It was pretty easy. All I did was I used a pry bar. Not even like it was that pry bar right there. I used that and just pried at the transaxle and where the CV axle goes into it at. You don't want to pull on them. You don't want to pull them out, because if you pull them out, then you have a chance of damaging the Make sure you pry it from the transaxle and not pull it. Now I'm going to go ahead and drain the coolant hose, or the coolant system, which I'm just going to pull this lower radiator hose right here where it goes into the radiator at, and that should drain 99% of the coolant out of it. After I do that, probably going to drain the oil, and then from that point it's just wiring. Take off all the wires and it should be good to go. So quick reminder, I just made a stupid mistake draining the oil on this. If you have these types of oil drain pans, make sure you take out the cap that covers the actual drain pan, because I kind of forgot to, and you can see that there's oil on the floor now, and my glove is now soaked with oil, so yeah. I can't believe I made that mistake. Yeah, make sure you take that out, or you're gonna end up with this. So now when it comes to this part of the process where you're mainly dealing with wires and everything, I don't really know how to show you all of that, because there's just so much in some very hard to see places, so I'm just gonna take care of that on my own. Make sure that you label though, because if you don't, you will regret it when you go to put everything back together. I'm gonna go ahead, take off this coolant hose and the one that actually goes to the engine, and then yeah, I'm just gonna get going on the wiring. I have done quite a bit since the last video. It is currently Tuesday, but I got off the idle air control valve, a bunch of the hoses. I took off the shifter, cables down there. They have these, I forget what they're called. I hold them in place to take those out, and then they got cotter pins on the actual pivoting parts. Take those out, those should come out. Fuel rail. So with the fuel rail, that one took me a minute to figure out because I've never messed with fuel rails before, but clearly I got it out. So it is just those two bolts right there, and the confusing part for me was the connectors. Where are they at? Right here. So for the injectors, they got this little like harness thing on it, but this thing has these clips right here. So you just gotta kind of like open that up a little bit, and it should come right out. And get those two bolts, pull it out with the injectors and everything still together, and you get that. So that's good. Took off the ground strap right there. A bunch of electrical wiring and everything. And yeah, that's kind of it. I think it's time to get pulled now. Oh, I forgot to mention the slave cylinder. So this is the 5-speed manual. So I have all this stuff to mess with. If you have the automatic, it's probably different. I don't know how to do the automatics or what they look like. So this is just for the 5-speed manual. It's literally just 2 bolts and another cotter pin on the pivoting part, and that's off too. So I think it's time to get it pulled. So when you do go to pull it, really just find 2 sturdy points on the engine. So for me, I'm probably going to use this bracket right here for, not sure what that amounts to. I'll have to take a better look at that, but that bracket looks like a good point, and something over here, probably this one right here. So I'll probably use this one and pull it off with that. So let me get working on that. Alright, so I'm currently working on actually pulling the engine. I got the engine hoist connected to this bracket right here. You can see it, and one right here. I am pulling this with the transmission attached, so keep that in mind. I already got this bolt out right here, but I'm going to go ahead and actually take off the mount itself so that I have more space to work with over here. I did take off the battery holder. It's right there. There's like 4 or 5 bolts that comes off too, pretty easy. And then I'll be working over here with this motor mount and that one down there. I think those are the only 2. No, wait, there's one down there too. So I'm gonna have to go down there and get that one out too. So, yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and take those out. This is a reminder to be very careful when doing this, because I have so far had to move this AC hose out of the way to avoid damaging anything, which seems like I did pretty good with. But I did not know this. The exhaust manifold not only attaches to the engine up here, but there's a bracket right here that goes down to, let me see if I can get that clamp right there. So I'm going to take that off and continue with what I'm doing. I do already have my engine on the stand, but here's a couple pointers when it comes to the transaxle. Now, when you take off the transaxle, make sure you still have it on the hoist when you do this. You do have to take off the clutch slave cylinder arm piece on it. I'll show you. This piece. This sits right there. You gotta take this off. This is for the 5-speed manual. Not sure about the automatics, but you have to take that off to be able to get the actual transaxle off the car, or off the engine. And then there's a collar inside of it. I'll show you that too. You gotta pop this out. I just used a flathead. Got in there, pop that out. So do all that, get that out, and then on the engine, you will still have your clutch on there, or on the automatics, you will have your torque converter on there. Manuals, obviously clutch and flywheel. So to take off the clutch and flywheel, because you'll have to do this in order to get it on the engine stand, take off the bolts around the outside. There are 6 bolts, yeah, just all around the outside. Take those off, and you will get your pressure plate off. Then you'll have your actual clutch plate inside. Just move that out of the way. And then there are a few other bolts inside. There are 12 points. I just put a socket on there with my impact and popped those off. And then slapped it onto the engine stand with 4 bolts. The tops I have M12 1.25 for the thread, and then the bottom is just a couple M10 bolts that I have driven on there. So yep, and this thing is perfectly sturdy. Absolutely no tension up here. It's just hooked up for safety. Sorry I can't help with the automatics. I don't know how to do those, or the V6 version, also different. But hope this is helpful for anybody watching this. Thank you for watching, and subscribe. Keep up with the build. All right, bye.